Israel launched a series of airstrikes targeting Hezbollah positions in Lebanon, following a deadly day where 558 people, including 50 children, were killed. These strikes are part of Operation Northern Arrows, a large-scale campaign aimed at Hezbollah strongholds. In response, Hezbollah launched missiles into northern Israel, escalating the long-standing conflict between the two. Israel reported that it hit around 1,600 suspected Hezbollah targets, while Hezbollah retaliated with missiles and an unmanned aerial vehicle, sending civilians in Haifa into shelters. Lebanon's health ministry reported 492 deaths and over 1,600 injuries from the bombardments. The violence marks the largest exchange since the 2006 war between Israel and Hezbollah, with growing fears of an all-out regional conflict. Global powers, including the UN and the G7, have called for de-escalation, warning of severe consequences if the situation worsens. Meanwhile, Pakistan condemned the Israeli actions, calling them a violation of international law, and called for global intervention to hold Israel accountable. The situation in Gaza continues to worsen, with UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres describing it as a non-stop nightmare. Speaking at the UN General Assembly, Guterres condemned the growing impunity in global conflicts, calling it morally intolerable, and urged nations to take action to prevent further escalation. US President Joe Biden also addressed the UNGA, pushing for a swift resolution to the Gaza conflict. He called for the finalization of a ceasefire deal brokered by the US, Egypt, and Qatar, which aims to bring security to Israel and Gaza and return hostages. Jordan's King Abdullah II warned that any forced displacement of Palestinians would be a war crime, rejecting suggestions of Jordan becoming an alternative homeland for Palestinians. Turkish President Erdogan criticized the UN and Western countries, accusing them of hypocrisy in their support of Israel and calling for global efforts to stop the conflict. Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes killed 22 Palestinians in Gaza amid heavy fighting near Rafah, raising the death toll since October 7 to over 41,000, with nearly 96,000 injured according to Gaza's health ministry. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has arrived in New York for a 5-day official visit to attend the United Nations General Assembly session. He will join world leaders to reaffirm Pakistan's commitment to multilateralism and the UN's role in promoting global peace and security. Scheduled to address the 79th UNGA on September 27, the Prime Minister plans to emphasize critical issues on the UN Security Council's agenda, including the Palestine and Kashmir disputes. He will also address international economic inequities, climate change, and rising Islamophobia. During his visit, he will participate in high-level meetings, including discussions on sea level rise and leadership for peace. While no formal meeting with President Biden is planned, informal interactions are expected at various events. During the United Nations Summit of the Future in New York, Defense Minister 𝐒𝐭𝐲𝐬𝐬 emphasized that sustainable development is unattainable as long as tragedies like the ongoing crisis in Gaza continue, perpetuated by the developed world. His comments addressed the devastating impact of Israel's military actions, which have resulted in the deaths of over 41,000 Palestinians. 𝐒𝐭𝐲𝐬 is part of the Pakistani delegation accompanying Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who arrived in New York for the summit. He highlighted that the adoption of the Pact for the Future reflects a collective commitment to address global security and development challenges that jeopardize current and future generations. Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb expressed optimism about the International Monetary Fund (IMF's) upcoming review of Pakistan's 37-month $7 billion extended fund facility (F). Speaking ahead of the IMF board's meeting on September 25, Aurangzeb said the government remains very hopeful for a positive outcome. This review comes amidst speculation that the disbursement was delayed due to the government's failure to secure fresh funds to cover a $2 billion external financing gap and pending debt rollover confirmations from China, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Aurangzeb emphasized Pakistan's commitment to structural reforms as part of the program.